All right. Welcome to the Ignitarium webinar series, everyone. We are glad to see so many of you here today. Thanks for taking out time on a Thursday evening. For some of you, we know it's Thursday morning. For those of you joining from the other part of the world, thank you all the same. I'm Malvika, and I'll be the host for this session today. As most of you might already know, this is a three-part webinar series that we have envisioned from the Ignitarium software team. The first one of which you're looking at today and you will be attending today. There are two other parts. So part 2 is on sensor fusion and part 3 is on perception for enhanced autonomy. So all of these are around the robotics theme, of course. And you want to keep your eyes open for part 2 and part 3 registrations, which will be coming up in the next few weeks. Today, we'll be focusing on ROS, its components, the tools which are used around it. And to take you through this, we have our expert from the robotics team, Sam Verghese. He's an embedded software engineer. He's been working with the robotics team for over a year now to build various concept models for different robotics applications. You can get a glimpse of a few of these on our robotics web page, the link for which we will be sharing at the end of the session. Also, watch out for demos. There will be interactive polls in this session. In fact, you should be seeing a poll right now on your screens. Please take a few seconds to fill the responses. Also, a few guidelines just to set, the housekeeping rules. Please mute yourself at all times and keep your video off. You will have the opportunity to, put forth your questions. We do have a Q&A session towards the end of this session. You can feel free to put in your questions in the Zoom chat window at any time during the session, and time permitting, we will take up your question and the robotics team will be addressing them. All right, so I think without wasting any more time, I want to hand over to Sam, who is our speaker for the day. Maybe wait a couple of minutes for the poll to end, I guess. Yeah, we're getting a lot of responses. All right, I think that's good. Yeah, Sam, please. Over to you, Sam. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Malavika, for the introduction. I hope you guys are safe at your home and following all the COVID-19 protocols. As compared to say 2018 and 19, we are living a very different life now. No doubt on that. COVID did have a very bad impact on most of the industries like healthcare, education, construction, just to name a few. But every change has a good and a bad part. The good part is that this has also caused certain industries to grow. Take the case of robotics. We are seeing a significant boom in the industry, like healthcare. We started to see robots being deployed in hospitals to assist doctors and nurses to deliver medicines and sanitize the area safely. It's not just the robotics industry that COVID catalyzed, but also the e-commerce sector. Stats actually shows an increased usage of online marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart. It isn't surprising, right? All of us now rely on Amazon for getting our essentials. Actually, there is one industry that the e-commerce platforms heavily relies on. That's the warehouse industry. As you have noticed, e-commerce has had a positive impact due to COVID. The number of orders from these platforms has increased, and this has an impact on the warehouse industry. Not all warehouses are designed to handle such large transactions. There are many factors affecting the working of the warehouse, like the growth of e-commerce, as we have just discussed, then customer satisfaction or the expectations of the customer. When we place an order on Amazon or Flipkart, we would expect that the order is delivered within 24 hours or just 48 hours. That's our expectation. To meet that, the warehouse has to struggle a bit. Then the dynamic global markets, environmental concerns, labor cost, lot of factors are affecting the working of a warehouse. So the simplest option that we could think of in increasing the daily output is to increase the number of people. But then the overall cost increases. People are trying to find ways and means to see how the efficiency of the system could be improved. Studies shows that 50% of the time consumed is for transporting packages. Imagine if we can improve the efficiency here. The impact on the overall cost can be cut down significantly. This is the area where robotics has a big role to play in. So let me introduce you to the concept of mobile robots. There are mainly two options to go with, AMR or AGVs. These are robots that can manage many of the tasks in warehouse, like transportation of the packages, sorting, and many more applications depending on the industry it's deployed in. These mobile robots could save a lot of time in package movement. So with respect to each other, AMR has an upper hand in the industry due to its scalability and cost. AMRs are intelligent that it can plan paths in the warehouse according to the surrounding situations, making them safer to deploy in industry. The dynamic nature of the robot makes it more scalable and cost effective, as it uses floor maps to navigate through the warehouse and obstacles. At the time of warehouse upgradation, we just have to update the floor map and the AMRs are ready to roll out in the new workspace. As of now, we have gone through the use cases of AMR in the warehouse industry. Now let's see few of the corner cases that have to be addressed, like navigation through a busy warehouse, then synchronization of the robot with external devices, then robot orientation, then obstacle avoidance, human safety. These are few of the major corner cases in warehouse. In this, we are going to primarily focus on the robot orientation. Why is the orientation of the robot in warehouse so critical? Let's see. See, here you could see an image of a robot dropping a package onto a slot on the floor. Now just imagine if the robot reaches the location, that's the point, and if it is oriented like say 90° off, then when it lifts the package and drops it, it will not fall into the slot or the intended slot, it will be lying around on the floor. Would that what we would need? No. Then imagine a case where a forklift is lifting a package. We know when a forklift lifts, it has to insert the fork into the slots provided on the package. Now, if the robot or the forklift is not aligned properly, then when it tries to lift the package, there are chances the package could topple and like a chain reaction, a lot of packages are going to fall down. So these are not the scenarios that a normal warehouse would appreciate. So here we could see the orientation of the robot during picking and delivery is pretty crucial. Here you could see a typical warehouse scenario created using a gazebo simulator. We can see a lot of packages placed here and there and also shelves. We could also see a robot placed at location A, which we would be using to demonstrate the use case on a warehouse floor. So let's move on with identifying the hardware that we are going to use. In this simulated world, we are going to use the hardware Pioneer P3DX. It's a mobile robot that consists of cameras, lidars, then IMU sensors, proximity sensors, and many more sensors according to the requirement and the situation where the robot is deployed. All of these are connected onto embedded hardware which is capable of interfacing these sensors and also run the application on the background. We have a mobile base which would be carrying all these hardware on the warehouse floor. In the previous slides, we mentioned the use cases and corner cases with respect to AMR. Now let's see how we can make it simpler and faster for development. ROS, Robot Operating System. ROS is basically a firmware or a middleware that creates a pipeline for different processes to communicate with each other. Here, processes is called as nodes. Each node communicates using topics and messages. ROS is widely used in robotics due to its scalability and large developer group. As ROS is an open source platform, plenty of resources are available online for your reference. Now here you could see a simple ROS tree where you have a ROS master and also two nodes, publisher and subscriber. Here the ROS master initiates the communication between the two nodes and they both communicate each other over ROS topic using ROS messages. This is a simple tree with which we could explain how a ROS works. Now let's see an overall demonstration of the process. Here we have set up this demonstration using the Gazebo simulated world. The robot basically has two modes of operation, that is full autonomous navigation and also action server based operation. When the operator gives the destination B from which the robot has to pick up the package. Now here we could see A as the location of the robot as robot base and also shelf bay, that is location B, from which the robot has to collect its package. For the first phase, the robot uses autonomous navigation stack, a stack which guides the robot to move from location A to B. Here you could see the robot is computing a path and following it for reaching from location A to B, the command given by the operator. The robot is able to compute an easiest and the shortest route by which the robot could reach location B. When the robot reaches location B, the robot gives a flag as the goal reached, after which the action client server kicks in. Here the action based server does a lane following method to move the robot from location B to B dash, orienting robot perfectly so that it is able to collect the package. After which the robot uses the same lane detection method to go from B dash to B. After which the robot uses the same navigation stack to go to the next location C, or it might be back to the robot's bay. Now let's go deeper into the two phases of the process, that is phase 1 autonomous navigation and phase 2 is the action server based process. In the first phase, as we have told, it is autonomous navigation. The goal is to move the robot from location A to location B using the navigation stack. So here we know the robot is at location A, which is the robot bay, and B the destination. B is basically a bit far from the exact location from which the robot has to pick the package. So the robot is using navigation to reach from A to B and not B dash. B to B dash is taken care by the action server, with which the orientation of the robot would be corrected. Before we move on with the navigation, we need to create a map of the floor. In the initial slides, I have told AMR's advantage is that AMR basically works with reference to a floor map. So we need to map the floor. AMR has an option called as map building, for which we have two methods, that is manual mapping and exploratory mapping. In manual mapping, what we basically do is, with the help of LiDARs or sensors, we will collect data and use algorithms to create a map out of it. In manual mapping, we will use teleoperate, or we will use teleoperation to move the robot manually over the warehouse floor and collect data. In exploratory mapping, we would just leave the robot free in the warehouse floor and it will map the floor of its own. And there are different algorithms used for both the methods. The few of the methods are the SLAM methods, that is simultaneous localization and mapping. These are the few of the methods that are widely used: Hector SLAM, Cartographer, then Gmapping, ORB SLAM. There are different SLAM algorithms according to the places. Like these are more valid when it is the mapping is indoor. When we have outdoor, we have different kind of algorithms to do the mapping possibilities. On to the right, you could see a matrix of comparison between different mapping algorithms along with different sources for the mapping. We could have Kinet, laser scanners, or a combination of laser scanner and a Kinet 3D cam with respect to Gmapping, Hector, and CRSM. That's another SLAM algorithm which is being used. And to the left, you could see a 3D map generated using depth cameras or 3D LiDARs, and all the different sensors are used to create the 3D map also. Now let's come back to ROS navigation stack. The navigation stack can be divided into 4 major blocks. The first one as a sensory block. second, the move base, third, the base controller, and fourth, the map server. The first block, the sensory block, basically consists of LiDAR or 3D cam, which collects data from the surrounding into the move base node. The move base block is the block from which the path for the robot is computed. Inside the move base, we have basically two nodes, that is the local planner and global planner. The global planner is responsible for computing the path in a global space, that is the rough direction from moving from location A to B. And the local planner is responsible for computing path in a short distance. So imagine the robot comes across an obstacle. The local planner comes into play and computes an alternate path to avoid the obstacle with reference to the global path. So I think you are able to understand the global path is the one which is defined from moving from A to B, and local path is what defines the robot's path for the few meters in action. And these two planners together give the velocity commands to the robot to move, and that is being received by the base controller node. Apart from this, we have another node as a block as a map server. We just created a map in the previous stage, and the map server will publish this map for the planners to compute a path in the global space as well as in the local space. So altogether, these four blocks together is what we call as a navigation stack in ROS. In detail explanation of each blocks is basically out of the scope for this small webinar series. Coming down to phase 2, the lane detection. Here, the robot uses vision sensor, that's a camera, to collect visual information from the warehouse floor. This vision information is fed to a processing node where the lanes are detected and the orientation of the robot is corrected. As the first step, the robot will be moving from location B to B dash using action client server method. The client will give a goal to the action server. Here, the goal is B dash. The action server keeps the client updated with the help of feedback messages. When the process of movement from B to B dash takes place, the action server keeps on updating the action client using a feedback messages. During this time, the robot would use image processing algorithms and PID algorithms to orient the robot perfectly in line with the red lane provided on the floor to orient the robot perfectly to collect the package. When the location B dash is reached, the action server gives a feedback to the action client as a result that the goal has reached. The next step would be taking the robot back from B dash to B, for which the same action server is used. Here, the goal would be to go to location B. The movement would be again updated using the feedback messages, and when the location B is reached, the result is published as location reached at B. Then the robot moves on with the journey to the destination, its next destination as provided by the operator. Now here, the phase 1 and phase 2 is in combination allows the robot to move from location A to B and collect the package in the right orientation. Phase 1 gives the robot the location A to B. Then phase 2 lane detection orients the robot perfectly to collect the package. With this, the robot has achieved its goal of collecting package from one location and delivering it to the next. Now let's see a few of the tools that would come in handy while developing with ROS. The first would be the RQT graph tool. Here the RQT graph is basically a dynamic window where you could see live nodes which is available now. These nodes will show where the messages are being passed or what all are the interconnections. These are very handy during the troubleshooting methods. Using the RQT graph, we will know which all nodes are active, which are inactive. Lot of information could be collected from this one particular graph, which makes the processing of troubleshooting much easier than we would expect. It's a very beautiful tool which would help us in that scenario. The next one would be the RVIS. Here we could see the map that has been generated. Now when you look closer, you could see red dots. These red dots are the laser data. On to the left, you could see different parameters on like map, path, laser scan. All these are data that has been published. We can say Arvis is a tool to visualize different sensor or different data. Here we could add laser scans or path that has been generated by the planners, as we have discussed when we were talking about navigation. Like that, this is a tool which is used to visualize sensor data or process data. We can be even we can use this Arvis tool to visualize the camera image that we have used to detect the lane. This is a very handy tool. The next one would be the gazebo simulator. In the initial stage, you would have seen a demonstration video in which we use this particular world to create the video. The gazebo simulator is a very powerful simulator which has a physics engine so that you can define gravity, inertia, like any physical property that we have in the world could be simulated inside the gazebo. Here, the basic concept is to create models, be it with a robot, be it a shelf, be it a package, whatever be it is, you are going to create it as the same way that we have an object in our real world, so that that object will have all the properties identical to what we have on a real world. So the gazebo simulator is one tool with which you are able to simulate algorithms or run a lot of tests without any expenditure. Basically, when we need to test something, getting a proper robot or a proper scenario would be too expensive. That's a place where a gazebo simulator comes into role, when we can use a gazebo simulator to simulate any robot or any circumstances, and we can run our algorithms multiple times without the risk of injury or system failure, or without any risk. We are able to assess the algorithm that we have designed. Altogether, with Arvis Gazebo, we are able to simulate any scenarios of our choice. With the help of RQT graph, you are able to troubleshoot the ROS architecture. And there are different tools in ROS which would be taken care in the upcoming series, with which we will be able to develop a robot or prototype a robot very quick and fast. To summarize this session, we started with the warehouse scenario where an AMR improved its efficiency, then the hardware architecture, the robot that we used in the simulated world. A brief idea about ROS framework, after which we discussed autonomous navigation, in which we saw different mapping algorithms and the breakdown of the navigation stack. Then we looked at the action, server client usage, and a few tools in ROS. I would like to thank all of you for joining me for part 1 of the webinar series.
Sam, thanks for the presentation. I believe Malavika had some issues with her audio. So thank you very much for giving us the insights on the topic. What we will do is probably we will, as mentioned in the chat window, you could put your questions over here. We will address and we will take these questions, and the team will reply to those.
Thanks, Sujit. Sorry, I had some glitch. Yeah, the poll should be on your screens. We'll just wait for maybe half a minute or so. The results are coming in of the poll. And then we can jump into Q&A. We'll just give it a few more. A lot of responses are coming in. Okay, I think meanwhile we can start taking questions. We can leave the poll on for those who have not answered yet. We're getting some questions. All right. So they're saying, what is the best place to get started with ROS is one question I'm seeing. And is ROS more like a framework? That is another. Sam and team, would you like to take one of these? Is ROS more like a framework? You want to unmute and you want to also switch on your video, Sam, Abel, and the team.
Hello.
Yeah, Sam.
I'm
Yeah, you're audible, Sam. Did you get the question? Yeah. So it's.
I had a small issue.
Okay, no problem. So is ROS more like a framework? Is one question.
Okay. Basically, we can say ROS is basically a framework, and it's kind of a middleware. Actually, it initiates. We are able to communicate between different processes. Say we have different sensors, and a lot of components are there when you talk about a robot. So we need a method by which we are able to communicate these sensors, because each sensor will be having its own processing happening on its side. So we need a method by which we are able to pass messages, or the data from sensors and actuators has to be transferred between each other. For which we use ROS as a platform or a framework which will enable this communication. It basically works on TCP/IP is the background communication protocol that has been used to enable this communication between the sensors. It's basically a framework. We could conclude with that point.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. There's another one by Rutvik. Can a robot be built on off-the-shelf component kits like Raspberry Pi and LiDAR with ROS and SLAM? Where do we find sample codes and documentation to get started on this?
Definitely. Actually, ROS, the main intention of creating the ROS framework was also for fast prototyping. So the question was, when can we off the shelf do it? Definitely, yes, you can. You can buy a Raspberry Pi LiDAR, something like not so expensive LiDARs like RP LiDAR are available in the market. So you can grab one of the RP LiDAR, then a Raspberry Pi. Any Raspberry Pi would do the job, unless you are trying to load it heavy algorithms, you try to run on top of it. Other way around, you have a LiDAR and you have a Raspberry Pi, and you need a motor driver to drive the mobile base. Actually, you can build one of yourself with very minimum cost. Say you can get a few Bow motors or DC motors, hook it up to a motor driver L293D, which is plenty available. I think most of you who have been with robotics will have that in hand. You can just plug all those things into a few of the GPIOs that is available on a Raspberry Pi, and it's all ready to go. Main components that you would need to map and navigate would be a LiDAR, a Raspberry Pi, and a motor driver, and some motor and a mobile base. That's all you need to get started with instant prototyping. And for the resources, actually, as I've told, ROS is a very open source platform. The resources and the materials are plenty available in Google. Actually, you just need to type in mapping and navigation using ROS. A lot of links will come up, in which even in YouTube and Google, ROS Wiki is one of the great places where you can get started with, where you will have plenty of tutorials by ROS developers itself, which would come very handy when you start developing robots using ROS.
All right. There's another one. Won't there be accuracy issues while mapping?
Okay, that one question could take a lot of time to answer. Basically, see, the point of accuracy comes in totally depends on the sensor that you use and the combination of what is your role and the environment in which you are trying to deploy it. See, if you are deploying it onto a very noisy environment, there will be some accuracy issues, but that can be addressed by using multiple sensors. There we could use the concept of sensor fusion, so that we are able to use particular sensors that will fit into that particular environment where you are trying to trying to build a robot. See, if you build a robot for indoor mapping and you take it outdoor, it will have some issues. So we need to change the sensors that you place on the robot so that it is able to work indoor or outdoor. The place where you are going to deploy the robot. So accuracy is an issue, but which it is addressed by different algorithms, and using different sensors, you can have a workaround with the issue of accuracy.
Okay. Just looking for other. Will a Raspberry Pi really be powerful enough to run the master node?
Okay, the master node Raspberry Pi, actually, yes, it is possible to run. A lot of prototypes are developed using Raspberry Pi as an initial prototype stage. Definitely, Raspberry can take it up, but it is not suggested to have on a larger scale robots, or when you have a lot of process intents, like when you have multiple sensors and all this process that has to be processed, then Raspberry Pi may not be able to, but still for a small scale prototyping to an extent, to an intermediate level also, Raspberry Pi will do the job. For advanced users and advanced projects, you would definitely need to go with more powerful boards like single board computer like NVIDIA Jetson, then Nano. A lot of single computers are available. You might need to shift to those if you're planning to run very heavy algorithms like 3D slams. A lot of, according to the algorithm you're planning to use, you might need to change the hardware you're not going to use. For normal purpose, for instant prototyping and all those concepts, Raspberry Pi will do the job pretty well.
I'm seeing another one. What are the advantage of using ROS over other robotics framework? Is there any advantage?
Definitely, that's the question is the answer to it actually. The basic concept of ROS itself was to make it more easier, and the advantage is it's open source. Whenever you see an open source resource, the number of developers which is going to work on that would be huge. And therefore, the more the number of people working on one particular technology, the resource and the scale of development would be really high, and easier to troubleshoot. Because if you face any issues, most probably the answer, it would have been faced by someone else in the industry or in the forum, and they would have solved it. So you would get faster reply to questions. You can, a lot of resources are available. That's the main advantage of ROS, and also it is supports multiple language. You can try with Python, C++. It is, you have multiple language to program that. So if you are a person who are a beginner who want to experiment with ROS, definitely you can start with Python, because it is the APIs or the code structure with the Python is a bit easier compared to C++, and you need more underlying control of the whole concept. Then you could use C++, but Python is also well and good enough for your starting with the ROS framework.
Right. Okay. Do we have something else? Right. I'm not sure you answered this. Which software tools do you recommend to design gazebo worlds?
Software, sorry?
Which software tools do you recommend to design gazebo worlds?
Actually, Gazebo itself is a tool which is used to create simulations basically. So when you download ROS as a package from the ROS wiki, you have the Gazebo already installed with the package. So you just need to type in command prompt about Gazebo in the terminal window. You will have the Gazebo open up. You will have a blank world basically when you open the Gazebo, and you might think, okay, what is this? This is not the simulation that I saw in the webinar. It's not like that. You need to bring up worlds. Actually, a lot of different worlds are available in online. You just need to search for Gazebo world, and you will get a lot of world files. You can download those world files and just open that, and you will have that particular world that you downloaded. Or you can create it from scratch. There are options like create walls, or you can use, actually inside Gazebo itself, you have tools with which you can create a world of your own. Say if you want to create a simple box structure or a simple house you need to build, there are options inside that to create what edit world. There's an option in Gazebo named as edit world, in which you will have you'll get another window where you will have small square checks in which you can use a pen tool to draw, and you will see what you draw on the below as a wall or a structure. It's not limited to just walls. As you have seen in the video, you can create packages. No, not packages. What I meant was the boxes, carton boxes, or any real world model could be brought into a Gazebo world. You have the options like it is very powerful because you are trying to input as many features as possible. Like you can input inertia, then your gravity. Literally, what would happen when you drop a, say, I have my mobile. If I drop it on my ear, it's going to fall down. The same thing you can replicate in a Gazebo world. You create a the model of a mobile. You can input gravity, density of the material, the inertia. Altogether, you give the data, and when you just when you lift the object in Gazebo world and you release the click, it's gonna fall down. And when you have a floor, and if you are not correctly configure the floor, you could literally see the phone falling down and down. It's nice to experiment actually. Gazebo world explaining altogether, it's not so easy because it's a huge one. Just experiment on it. It's a good place to start with for your prototype simulations.
Okay. How different sensors with different data types are incorporated in ROS?
Okay. Different sensors actually, you imagine one sensor, you can make it work with ROS. Say most of you as a beginners, I believe most of you are college students, or the audience I would say is like, so you want to have a sensor like, what do you say, IR sensor, a basic IR sensor that most of us would be using. If you want to integrate that with ROS, it's possible. You just need another microcontroller. The most familiar one would be your Arduino. To start, the basic concept would be just to plug that IR into the Arduino or any microcontroller. Then you can convert that data into a ROS compatible data type. We have an option called a ROS serial, with which you are able to communicate with external devices. Say if you have a sensor that is already ROS enabled, then you just need to plug it in and you need to install the driver. The sensor would be good to go. If you find a sensor that isn't directly ROS compatible, then you can make it ROS compatible by using another microcontroller or any of the device which is able to convert the data of the sensor into a ROS compatible. And data type, you have different data types available in ROS, which you will have a clarity when you just, the documentation with ROS has explained how to set up your own message types, and most of the data types are there, not most, all the data types. Along with that, you can also create a lot of data types of your own, message types of your own. There are a lot of resources available on the ROS wiki page on that one particular topic itself.
Okay. There's one more I see. Have you implemented reinforcement learning algorithms in your projects? You got that, Sam?
Hello?
Yeah. Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Have you implemented reinforcement learning algorithms in your projects?
I think I'll give that to one of my team leads, Mr. Able, to answer that one particularly. He's working on that.
Yes, Nirmal, could you take it up?
Yeah, like reinforcement learning, we can actually make use of any deep learning or machine learning based algorithms or techniques into ROS. ROS has its compatibility. So to be specific, there are algorithms that are actually, like Sam mentioned, there can be exploratory mapping and there can be manual mapping. So in exploratory mapping, that can be implemented using reinforcement learning. Also, one example to cite is that I think you have seen the since it is the COVID situation, we have seen the vacuum cleaner robot. So there are one famous vacuum cleaner called a Roomba, and that is actually built with ROS, and it has reinforcement learning enabled. So once this algorithm is actually implemented on that, the robot will know that where to go and where it should not go. So in that way, reinforcement learning can be incorporated, and we have used that. And also in talking in terms of deep learning and machine learning, the next idea is that we can use many other techniques like semantic segmentation or object detection and anything like object for object recognition, all these features can be incorporated into ROS, and it can be made to make the robot better. So talking specifically about reinforcement learning, we have used that, and also we can use any other deep learning technique which is actually supported on the platform. So ROS has no limitation in those aspects. You can use whatever you want. The only thing is that the processing power and the processing time required for the deep learning model to work. So if that is okay, and and the time criticality of the operation permits, we can use any algorithm we want.
I just wanted to add to that. There is so as you all know that reinforcement learning already has the OpenGym AI tool available, and it directly supports ROS and the ROS framework. So whatever you develop in OpenGym could be simulated in Gazebo World as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll take up just one more. Which OS is used in hardware for ROS? Which OS is used in hardware for ROS?
I think that's a two-part question, like which OS is used and the hardware for ROS. That I think that's a two-part question. The OS, as of now we have the support for Linux, mainly Ubuntu, and also Mac OS, and also now the latest version of ROS supports Windows also, and we can have RTOS support for ROS also. So the as of now the ROS 1 supports, we have mainly two versions for ROS. The ROS 1 supports up to the Ubuntu 20.0 from LTS, and that is the latest version which is being supported is the Neutec version, and we have ROS 2 that is also supported on the same version. So as of now, the talking about the operating systems, we have support for all the three operating systems. And talking about the hardware, I think Sam has already answered that question. We can use any hardware which has which even starting from a Raspberry Pi to any high-end computer that can run some Linux or any other full OS. So any hardware platform along with any microcontroller that can run my ROS node can be used. So there is no limitation in those lines. Like we can use the cheap Raspberry Pi to even the high-end, say the NVIDIA boards that can be used for the self-driving cars also for running ROS. So there is no limitations in those lines.
To add to that also, actually, I missed on one point more when you asked about the hardware. Actually, you don't need to get caved at Raspberry Pi. Actually, there's another concept called as micro ROS. Actually, you can deploy micro ROS on microcontrollers. Like most of you have heard STM32 series of microcontrollers. Actually, you can run a lighter version of ROS called as a micro ROS on top of a microcontrollers like an STM32 or LMX boards. Also, it's possible. So Raspberry Pi, one step below Raspberry Pi, we could load a micro ROS onto a microcontroller also to run the same things.
All right. Thanks so much, guys, to the team. We've come to the end of the time for this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you have any questions, queries, you can drop us a mail. I have just put in the email ID here in the chat box as well, and you see it on the screen. Also, you can visit our robotics page for more information. We're all looking forward to seeing you in part 2 and 3 as well. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much from all of us at Ignitarium.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you all for being with us.
Thanks.